He stood tall, firm, and cold as granite. "No entry without clearance," the young officer said, his voice sharp, his gaze unwavering. His outstretched hand formed a barrier as solid as a locked steel gate. But before him, the old man didn't flinch. His shoulders sagged not from the weight of the years, but from the invisible burdens only a soldier carries home from war. His eyes, clouded by age but blazing with memory, held their ground. His left sleeve, neatly pinned, fluttered slightly in the wind, a silent testament to what he'd already given. The air between them thickened. A small line began to form behind the veteran. A mother shifted her child from one arm to the other. A businessman glanced at his watch. But no one spoke. No one stepped forward. "Sir," the young officer pressed, now louder, "I cannot allow you past this point without proper identification." The veteran's hand trembled as he pulled out an old, weathered card from his coat pocket. The plastic had cracked. The ink had faded. The photograph on it was decades younger, but the eyes were the same. The officer barely looked at it before shaking his head. Outdated. Not valid. There was no compassion in his tone. No hesitation. Just the cold obedience of someone who knew the rules but not the weight of their consequence. The old man's hand slowly lowered, card slipping back into his pocket like a dismissed memory. His lips parted, perhaps to argue, perhaps to plead, but no words came. He simply bowed his head, turned, and began to walk away. But just before he passed the final pillar, his gaze drifted upward to the flag that fluttered at the entrance. A flag he had once saluted under gunfire, under burning skies, under nights that never seemed to end. His fingers twitched as if they wanted to rise, but he let them fall. Behind him, the officer turned his attention to the next person in line, unaware that something irreversible had just slipped through his grasp. The man's name was Colonel James Mercer. And the building he had just been denied entry to was the very military base he helped save 4 decades ago. James Mercer's story was written in the ink of sacrifice at T-19. He walked into a war that would never leave him at T-21. He lost his left arm in a battle that turned the tide at T-22. He stood before his fallen brothers, promising to carry their stories. His world had been mud-soaked boots, adrenaline-laced nights, the sharp bite of gunpowder lingering in his nostrils. The sound of distant choppers still echoed in his bones. The weight of his rifle, though long gone, still pulled at his shoulder. His uniform had been folded away years ago, but the war had followed him home, stitched into the seams of his quiet life. His wife would often find him sitting in silence, eyes glazed over, fingers subconsciously tracing the phantom shape of the arm he no longer had. There were days he would linger at the edge of the parade grounds, watching the new soldiers march, listening to the rhythmic thump of boots. He never interrupted, never asked for recognition. He simply watched, as if those marching feet could carry pieces of him forward. But today was different. Today was the anniversary of a battle most people had forgotten, but one he could never let go of. Today, he came not for himself, but for them, the ones whose names were etched on the cold, stone wall inside the base. His brothers. And yet, the path had been closed to him by someone who couldn't see beyond the plastic in his hand. The young officer, Lieutenant Bradley Knox, had memorized the rules with the precision of a man who had everything to prove. His father had served. His grandfather had served. He bore the weight of legacy like armor that he saw the world in black and white, orders and disobedience. He believed respect was earned through rank, through polished boots, through the crisp salute of protocol. But Bradley had not yet learned the language of silence. He hadn't yet understood the stories that walk on prosthetic legs or lean on canes with medals pinned to trembling chests. The lieutenant resumed his post, brushing off the unease that lingered after the veteran's departure. He told himself he had done the right thing, the correct thing, the by-the-book thing, until his radio crackled. "Lieutenant Knox, General Arden on the line. He's coming to the gate. Immediate." The voice was sharp, urgent. Within moments, a black SUV pulled up. Doors swung open. Out stepped General Marcus Arden, a man whose very presence could hush a room. His uniform carried not just the weight of stars but the respect of decades. His jaw was clenched, his steps purposeful. He stopped inches from Lieutenant Knox. "Did you deny entry to Colonel James Mercer?" Arden's voice was calm, but beneath it was something colder, something that sliced deeper than anger. Yes, sir, Knox replied, standing straighter. His ID was invalid. The silence that followed was suffocating. Do you know who he is? Knox faltered. A veteran, sir. General Arden's eyes hardened. Colonel Mercer is the reason this base still stands. He led the counteroffensive when we were outnumbered 5-1. He bled for this soil. The plaque in the memorial hall bears his name. Knox's mouth opened, then closed. His throat tightened. You sent him away. Those 4 words landed heavier than a shouted reprimand. Retrieve him, Arden ordered. Now. Knox's pulse thundered in his ears as he sprinted past the gate, scanning the street. The veteran wasn't far, his slow, steady steps moving toward the bus stop. Sir. Knox called out, breathless. Sir, please wait. Colonel Mercer paused, but didn't turn. Knox jogged to him, his chest tight with something he couldn't. Name. Please, you're requested back at the base. General Arden insists. Mercer turned, his gaze steady but unreadable. My ID wasn't valid. Knox swallowed, his voice thick. Sir, no ID could ever match your worth here. For the first time, Mercer's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. He said nothing. His silence was louder than any speech. When they returned, the base stood still. Soldiers paused mid-stride. Officers stepped aside. Word had traveled faster than the young lieutenant's return. The gates parted, not for protocol, but for honor. General Arden met them halfway, standing tall as he extended his hand. Mercer gripped it firmly, a left hand grasping a right, a bridge between generations. The general turned to the silent ranks. Colonel James Mercer does not need clearance to walk here. This is his ground, his story, his sacrifice, and no gate will ever stand in his way again. The soldiers around them straightened, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. Some saluted, others simply bowed their heads, and in that moment, without a single order given, the entire base fell silent in respect. One soldier whispered to another. He walked away once. This time, we won't let him. That day, Lieutenant Knox walked beside Colonel Mercer through the halls, past the photographs, past the statues, until they reached the memorial wall. Mercer's fingers traced the names carved in stone. He paused at one. Daniel Hargrove, his closest friend, the brother he couldn't save. Knox watched as the old soldier's shoulders trembled, though his eyes remained dry. After a long silence, Mercer finally spoke. We all leave parts of ourselves behind, Lieutenant. On battlefields, in memories, at gates. Knox lowered his gaze. I didn't see you, sir. I only saw the rule. Mercer's voice was soft but steady. Rules build walls. Respect builds doors. The words sank deep, reshaping something inside the young officer. As Mercer turned to leave, Knox's voice stopped him. Sir, may I walk with you? You shouldn't walk these halls alone. A quiet nod was all the answer he gave, but that nod carried a weight Knox would carry for the rest of his life. Some days later, a new sign appeared at the base's entrance. In honor of Colonel James Mercer, all veterans welcome. No ID required. Beneath it, etched in brass, rules build walls. Respect builds doors. Iconic quotes from the story, rules build walls. Respect builds doors. No ID could ever match your worth here. We all leave parts of ourselves behind, on battlefields, in memories, at gates. There are people who walk among us, wearing no medals, carrying no paperwork, holding no proof of their sacrifice. But they carry battles in their bones and stories in their silence. Sometimes, the greatest strength isn't in following the rule. It's in seeing the person standing in front of you. Where are you watching from? What does this story mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in honoring silent heroes, subscribe for more stories that must be told.